Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Last week, we had part 1 of the negative and positive medical experiences that you shared. These are both the good and the bad experiences you had while going through either infertility or pregnancy and infant loss. Today's episode is the final part of the experiences you shared. I'm curious if you like this format of the show. Would you like to hear more episodes with things submitted by the listeners? Let me know by emailing me at sarah@journeyforjasmine.com or reach out to me on any of my social media at journeyforjasmine. This first one comes from Brittany. Hi, my name is Brittany and I am from a little town called Hanford in California. It took me seeing 2 OBs and a nurse practitioner before landing with the OB that I have now and have been with since about the beginning of 2020. She has been with me through 5 out of 6 pregnancies, seeing me through all my ups and downs. She was there to walk me through my second and third losses and both of my rainbow babies and is currently walking with me through my sunshine baby's pregnancy. Throughout the whole pregnancy with my daughter, my OB was there to guide me through fears with some of the complications I had at the beginning and my anxieties of having a pregnancy after multiple losses. About 4 months after I gave birth to her, I was pregnant again. I was nervous, but more excited than anything. I felt that because my body could carry a baby to term, that this pregnancy, my baby, would get to stay with us, and I would have my babies about a year apart. Many people have gone on to have Irish twins, so I thought I could too. That was not the case. We lost Amias at 6 weeks, 2 days, but didn't find out until 11 weeks, 3 days that the day we got to see his little heart tones was the last day we had with him alive. This is where my OB is the freaking best. She knew how hard it was to get to my daughter, and we were both so excited for this little one. She was just as devastated that we lost him. She told us he was gone and our choices, and then stepped out for me and my husband to talk. A little bit later, she came back in to see what our decision was and asked if she could give me a hug. She said that she was so sorry and that it isn't fair, and that she was heartbroken that it happened. Later, I found out that she had used that time that she stepped out to take a minute to cry in her office. To have an OB cry and feel for my heartbreak showed me that I had the right OB for me. 4 months later, we were pregnant again with our rainbow son who made it earthside. My OB and I were extra cautious in his pregnancy at pretty much every step. If I had extra questions, she answered. If I needed a good cry after seeing he was okay, she was there to give me a hug and let me let it all out. She took the extra time with me, even though she always had a full day with patients. I am now pregnant with our last baby, our little sunshine. She is still the attentive doctor as she has been throughout all my 5 pregnancies I have been through with her. I am so lucky to have found a doctor that is willing to work with me and answer any questions to fill in gaps. She is definitely a 1 in a million doctor. This next one comes from Allie. My name is Allie, and I live in the Seacoast area of New Hampshire. My experience of the loss of my son Tate connected me with an incredible pregnancy loss doula. At 19 weeks, 6 days, I went into premature labor and delivered my sweet boy the next day at 20 weeks. I know I am not alone, that when experiencing a loss like this, it is difficult to consider anything outside of the immediate loss. When I was admitted, the team of midwives and nurses shared that the hospital had a doula they provided that specialized in pregnancy loss. I hesitated because I tend to want to be alone in challenging situations, but I am so grateful they gently pushed me to at least meet her. She is the definition of warm, kind, and gentle in her approach to support. She shared a bit about her background and helped me navigate all my options when it came to the care of my baby and myself, many things that I am still so thankful for today. She shared a bit about her background and helped me navigate all my options when it came to the care of my baby and myself, many things that I am still so thankful for today. Aside from her support through the end of my labor and then delivery, she ensured we had all the time we wanted to be with our son with the use of a cuddle cup. She brought items like a camera with a memory stick that was ours to take, and between her and the sweet nurses, we had beautiful pictures of us with Tate. She had air-dry clay and stamps to get imprints of his hands and feet, multiple ultra-preemie hats that we could fit to him, a knit blanket to snuggle him in and take with us, a beanie baby that was almost his exact size and connected us with Mammy's poppy plates to have another keepsake with his hand and footprints. These are all cherished items, but there were two additional things she provided us that are truly invaluable to us. The first was two fabric hearts, one that he held while we snuggled, and one that I put on my chest. When it came time to have him picked up by the funeral home, we swapped hearts so that I could bring his home with me, and he could be cremated with mine. The second thing she helped us with, and the hardest part of the entire part of the experience for me, was the knowledge that my labor could not be stopped, and Tate's delivery also meant his imminent death. Prior to the delivery, she had a Doppler brought in so we could listen to his heart one last time, and suggested recording his heartbeat on our phones. Her name is Amy Peterson and can be found at Blossom, Birth Loss Support. Aside from being an amazing support in the time of delivery, she also provides support afterwards through her platform on Facebook. I did want to include in my story the thoughtful nurse who heard me say that in the moments Tate was still with us, it looked like his fingers moved in a peace sign motion. When we looked at the pictures when we got home, we found a sweet one where she posed his hand, and I am forever grateful to have not only the memory of witnessing it, but a visual representation to keep forever. Unfortunately, I do not remember her name, but she was one of the multiple incredible nurses in the labor and delivery unit at Wentworth Douglas Hospital in Dover, New Hampshire. If you would like to connect with me on Instagram, my name is tates.family.story. The next one comes from Abigail. My name is Abigail Astle, and I am from Northern California. My experience with the staff at the hospital when delivering my stillborn son was amazing for a couple of reasons. Almost everyone was very aware that our situation was different than others down the hall, so no one came in happy or excited. They came into the room with honor from what was happening. One nurse in particular was extra special to us. She took the time to get to know us, be silent with us, and cry with us. She allowed her emotions in her shift at work, and it was completely appropriate and exactly what we needed. Someone that showed that they were human also, and that this sucked. She prayed with us, and she even stayed a few hours past her shift on overtime because she knew we needed her. Come delivery time, the doctor was calm, respectful, quiet, and gave clear instructions that I could follow in my broken state. She allowed me to cry and be broken before moving on to the next thing to be done during deliveries. I've never met such a patient and kind doctor and team that she had with her, and the deafening silence you hear when delivering a stillborn was joined with the team. I deeply appreciate that they honored that silence with us. Fast forward, I went and found the nurse on Facebook that stayed with us through it all and sent her a long thank you message. I understand that doctors and nurses never know what happens to the patients they help, and I needed to thank her and let her know we were going to be okay. Fast forward 4 years later, and the nurse who impacted my life so much is now a board member on my new nonprofit called Daniel Lee's Gift in honor of my son. All of this journey has come full circle, and there has been so much healing and growing along the way. I am forever grateful for the staff we have when I delivered my son. They are such a permanent part of his story, and I love that. The next one comes from Christy. Hi everyone, I'm Christy from A Mother's Chance. I'm originally from Colorado, but I've been living in Texas for about 6 months now. Unfortunately, I experienced the devastating loss of my daughter, Arabella, through stillbirth. During that incredibly difficult time, I had the most amazing nurse. She went above and beyond, taking photos, making clay footprints, and even creating ink, hand, and footprints of Arabella. She also gave us a special blanket for her, and at the very end, she gently wheeled me out and gave me a warm goodbye hug. I'll forever be grateful for her kindness and compassion. It made such a difference during an otherwise unbearable experience. This next one comes from Rachel. My name is Rachel, and we lost our son Henry at 33 weeks gestation after a routine pregnancy. The night we found out Henry had died, the midwife with us was amazing. She was so supportive and lovely. She went above and beyond when she volunteered to be our midwife for his birth a couple of days later. Knowing the face and person we would go back to was such a big help. She was amazing through my labor, just incredibly calming. When Henry was born, it was so clear she had listened to everything we had said in the lead up. But more than that, she treated Henry like any normal baby. She spoke to him, cared for him so gently, and those are memories I will never forget. I'd go as far as to say some of my favorites. I later learned that I was the first lady she'd seen told her baby had died, and Henry was the first stillbirth she had been part of. It makes the care we received even more special. I feel it was incredibly brave of her to volunteer herself, and we were so grateful. She was clearly a natural in bereavement care, and we were so lucky to have her. We still keep in touch every now and then. She's lit candles for Henry in various cathedrals and wished him a happy birthday. I very much hope she's a part of any future deliveries I have, with different outcomes, of course. This one comes from Nini. My name is Nini, and I'm from Anaheim, California. My son was stillborn on August 19th, 2024. My mom is a labor and delivery nurse, and she was there assisting with the birth, helping me with the bedpan, getting my epidural, and even being the last family member my son was with when we left the hospital because I just couldn't bear to see him go. She really put her nurse cap on to be there for me and my husband, and put her personal ties to seeing her first grandbaby pass on hold. My caseworker was also amazing. She made herself available to me from beginning to end. She made sure the process of me leaving the hospital went as smoothly as possible and went through all of my options. She handled him with so much love and respect. She even put a hat on him because I had him wrapped in a blanket the entire time he was with me. She made sure I had all my discharge medications, the hallways were completely cleared when I was being wheeled out, and that I would go straight to the car. I saw her a month and a half later at a Walk to Remember for Pregnancy and Infant Loss, where there were thousands of people, and she remembered me and hugged me for so long and told me how proud she was of me being there. I'll never forget her forever. My bad experience was with an overnight nurse after my son passed in postpartum. She refused to acknowledge my son. He was in a bassinet on ice, and even made weird faces. When I would ask for more ice packs for him, she would roll her eyes and begrudgingly bring them. I was on IV antibiotics since I was in labor for 5 days, so I was at risk of infection. She was having issues with changing the bag and spilled 75% of the bag and just skipped my dose instead of getting a new bag. We were just so focused on my son that we didn't want to bother with it. We just wanted her out of the room as soon as possible. This next one comes from Anna. She was my night shift nurse the night before I delivered the first of the twins. I had been in bed upside down for days at this point. I felt gross. My curly hair was a tangled mess. Jana Lee took out my epidural in order to help me to the shower. Once in the shower, she helped me clean up and wash my hair. The hospital didn't have any brushes, and I didn't bring one, so she went to her locker and grabbed her personal brush and used that to help untangle the mess that was my hair. The next day, I gave birth to the first of my twins at 19 weeks, 5 days. The team of nurses in the room during delivery were wonderful and had the foresight to grab my husband's phone to take photos and videos of my sweet Taylor while she was alive and in our arms. I treasure those photos and videos. After Taylor passed, the nurses the next few days were so good to us. They found a professional photographer that donated their time to take free photos of us and Taylor. They printed off some of the photos of us and Taylor and put them into a photo album for us. They did the traditional hand and foot ink prints and also took the time to make plaster molds of her hands and feet for us to hold in our hands forever. They brought in a pile of blessing dresses and let us pick our favorite for her that actually fit her tiny body. They even found a funeral for us that wouldn't charge. They did all of that and so much more. They were just so good to us. 5 days after Taylor's birth and passing, my water broke. Riley was stillborn not long after, at 20 weeks and 3 days. Once again, they did everything they had done with Taylor, again with Riley. The dress, photos, funeral home, etc. The nurses comforted me as best they could, and several promised to be there the next time when I delivered my rainbow baby. 9 months after losing my twins, I got a text from one of my nurses. They hadn't forgotten about us and had been working on a surprise. They had saved a mold of each girl's hands and created a little statue of their hands embraced with each other. Even now, a year later, I'm still friends with all of them on Facebook. Those nurses were so amazing to me and my husband on what were the worst days of our lives. This next one comes from Angela. My name is Angela, and I'm from London, UK. I am a TFMR mama. August 14th, 2023, I gave birth to my sleeping angel. I went in on the 13th of August in the earlier afternoon to start my labor. 2 midwives entered the room and asked if I had named my baby. I said yes, Aaliyah. They both looked at me in surprise. One of the midwives who was there was also named Aaliyah. It just felt like God had sent me her. She was only there for training, and it was her last week at Queen Charlotte's Hospital. Aaliyah was preparing me and getting me ready for the worst to come. I was scared. We waited patiently for my contractions to start. 4 hours later, there was nothing, and Aaliyah's shift was coming to an end. The night shift midwives were getting ready to take over. We waited and waited. In the earlier hours of August 14th, my contractions started. All through the night, my baby took her time and waited for Aaliyah's shift to start. She was back, and baby Aaliyah was finally ready to be born into this world, sleeping peacefully. Aaliyah was born at 8 on the dot, weighing 750 grams at 27 weeks and 6 days old. Aaliyah took her and got her cleaned and dressed. I was having trouble with my placenta. I don't remember much as I kept passing out. I remember being rushed to surgery. I remember Aaliyah being by my side the whole time. My husband wasn't allowed to go in. I remember being a bit high on my medication and not understanding what the hell just happened. I hated the blood tests and injections. I remember telling Aaliyah every time they injected me or took my blood, and she just apologized every time. She held my hand the whole time and never left my side. A few hours later, I was reunited with my daughter and husband. Aaliyah picked my daughter up, and that's when it hit me fully. I still don't understand how I got through it. She gently put Aaliyah, my baby, in my arms. I was so afraid of holding her as she was so tiny. She was dressed in a knitted outfit which was donated by someone who I really appreciate and would love to say thank you to. So if you made these for stillborn babies at Queen Charlotte's Hospital, my daughter looked beautiful. I stayed in the hospital for 3 more days so I could spend more time with my daughter. Aaliyah helped me create memories of my daughter. I will cherish them forever. Aaliyah's midwife took care of me and baby Aaliyah. I felt so comfortable and safe. I know my daughter was so cared for and loved. Aaliyah baby was born with encephalocele, which causes the skull not to fully close, which is a rare birth defect. I knew Aaliyah's brain was out at the back of her head. I never saw it as the midwife had put a hat on her. She looked so perfect and beautiful. I didn't want to leave without seeing her head. I asked Aaliyah to stay with me, and she took her time to hear my story. Aaliyah was the name I chose when I was in my teens. I said if I was ever to have a daughter, I would name her Aaliyah. So this name has been with me for a long time. The midwife gently removed Aaliyah's hat. I saw what had caused me to lose the daughter I had always wanted. I really can't thank Aaliyah midwife enough for helping me get through the hardest time of my life, for being there from the start to the end. Looking back at everything, I honestly don't think I could have done it without Aaliyah's passion, the care she gave. She kept me calm, held on to me when I was scared. She listened and understood. She checked on me, gave me encouragement to be able to get through those 3 days. I believe she was sent my way for a reason. She helped me in ways I can't thank her enough for. I don't think midwives get enough credit. They are also a part of our journey and story. We appreciate and are so thankful for all that you do. Angela also had a negative experience to share. So when I went in for my 20-week scan, I was excited because we were going to find out the gender of the baby. It was June 20th, 2023. My husband and I went into the ultrasound room. The sonographer was doing her checks on the baby. I don't remember how long it took or how long I was in the room for. After scanning, she asked me to sit up and sit on the chair. I was confused, like she didn't ask me if I wanted to know the gender of the baby. She rushed off and says she needs to talk to a doctor. We waited in that room. It felt like a lifetime. She finally came back in and said no doctors were available and has booked me to come back in 2 days later. We asked if everything was okay, and she replied she can't stay, and we would just have to wait until we see a doctor. She seemed like she wanted us out of that room ASAP, so I gently asked if we could know the gender of the baby. She handed me back my blue book, the maternity record book, and said yes, a girl. We quietly left the hospital very confused. I just knew something wasn't right. I sat in the car and decided to read the paperwork she put in the blue book. Capital letters, encephalocele, a word I couldn't even pronounce. So I grabbed my phone and started to Google it. There it was, a list of negative comments. Rare disease, low chance of survival, very low quality of life. It was my birthday the next day on the 21st of June. I spent my day Googling and trying to find positivity, crying my eyes out, praying this was just a mistake, trying to find out what can I do to fix this? What can I do to make it right? We went back in on the 22nd of June, the worst news ever. Everything I had Googled myself was all true. Why did I have to find out this way? Why was I treated like I had done something wrong? Why wasn't I seen sooner? Why didn't the sonographer just talk to me? Instead, I had to find out by Googling it myself. I was told baby Aaliyah wasn't going to survive. I'd left the room to come back in 2 weeks for more scans. Yes, 2 weeks knowing my baby isn't going to be with me. At 2 weeks, Aaliyah started to kick me. She was so playful I couldn't understand how all of this could be true. She was so strong. I decided to book my own private 4D scan so I can make memories with Aaliyah. I saw her smiling, being playful, hiding her little face, hearing her heart beating so perfectly. Deep inside, I just couldn't wrap around the what was really happening. I went back in for more scans with the hospital to see if everything was okay. But then the doctors arrived, and that's when they told me to think about having a termination and asked me what I was thinking. I said, I'm hoping. The doctor replied, what hope? That's when my heart scattered. They said if she survived, they would only make her comfortable. Then why would I bring her into this world for you to watch her slowly die and suffer? Did I really have a choice? Seems like the decision was made, but they just wanted to hear it from me. Doctors carrying on that she won't survive. She will have minutes or hours left. Really, is there any hope? Won't you operate on her? Are you going to try to save her? Isn't that your job? 99 questions running in my head, but nothing coming out. The pain deep inside stole my voice. The worst yet the right decision I had to make. To let her go peacefully inside me, the only place she knew love. So she wouldn't suffer coming into this world that couldn't save her. TFMR mamas, we don't speak up about our babies because people don't understand the hard decisions we had to make. Aaliyah was born August 14th, 2023. We wanted you so bad. We love you so much. Rest in peace, baby girl. This next one is from Kaylani. My name is Kaylani Francis Sophos, and I live in South Florida, Broward County. On March 24, 2024, at Memorial Hospital West, my husband and I got the worst news imaginable. There was no heartbeat at 34 weeks gestation. When I walked in at first, surprisingly enough, the lead ER labor and delivery doctor recognized me from earlier in the month from a tiny scare. So when I told her and the staff I hadn't felt movement, they rushed and used 3 different tocos and ultrasounds to find my baby girl's heartbeat. Very quickly after, the lead doctor shared the heartbreaking results. When they got me to a room to begin induction, I was met by the first round of nurses, and they ended up being special and memorable in different ways. I was in the hospital for a total of 4 days, and I truly don't think I could have made it through those days without nurses Bethany, Allie, Dr. Sherson Gray, and Lindsay. Once my daughter was delivered sleeping on March 25th, 2024, at 8:05 p.m., both my husband's and my family got a moment to hold my baby. And by the end of the night, I didn't really get any time holding her when my husband said, I think we should give her to the nurses because her body will start to look different. I was in utter shock, so I agreed. I couldn't sleep the whole night, and first thing early in the morning, I asked Nurse Lindsay if you could bring my daughter back so I can have her for the mainstay. Very quickly, Lindsay brought my daughter, Leah Lay, into the room and asked if we had a chance to look at her, and I said yes, briefly yesterday. She said, would you like to have time to take pictures with her and check out her toes and really get a grasp of her? In which I'm grateful she suggested because this was my first pregnancy and I didn't know what to expect. My brain was all jumbled together. She spent about 40 minutes taking pictures for us and spending time with us explaining any questions we had regarding her body. This might seem insignificant, but I know nurses and doctors in hospitals didn't have that much time to cater to one patient, so it was greatly appreciated. Now we have a ton of memories through pictures, and we actually blew up one of the pictures that was taken and hung it up on our living room, thanks to Lindsay. Allie was one of my first nurses when I checked into the hospital. She was gentle, sweet, understanding, and very warm. She must have been around my age, 26 at the time. She constantly came in to check on me while I was being induced, trying to make me as comfortable as I can be in the worst time in my life. What really stood out to me about Allie was that she had her day off the day that Aaliyah Lay was born, March 25th, and when she came into work early, the 26th. She spoke to some nurses and found out that I had been delivered and moved to another room. She went up the elevator and straight into my room to hug my husband and I, check in, see my baby girl, and give her condolences. Her eyes the entire time were filled with water, until she quickly burst into tears and immediately left the room. It was so refreshing to look back to see so much humanity in a nurse. Considering they see so much already, they stay composed and keep everything very professional. I can tell she really cared and went out of her way for us. Bethany was the nurse I had when I first came into the hospital as well, but she was actually the nurse on duty in my room when I delivered. She was so compassionate, and there's one conversation where she expressed why she continued to check on me continuously more than the average. At 5 a.m., March 25th, 2024, she came into the room as I was crying. She sat down on my bed, hugged me, and wiped away my tears. She told me how brave I was and that even though this is a very terrible time, that things would get better. Bethany said that in her line of work, she's seen a lot of tragic things and that my experience would be one of those tragic things that she takes home with her. She said she would always remember me. They're trained to stay composed and not let things get to them. But I can tell my horrible nightmare had gotten to her. I was 26 at the time, newly married, 34 weeks expecting my first baby, which was healthy up until all her movements and somersaults tied her up with the umbilical cord around her neck twice and her arm once. Dr. Shershin Gray is my OBGYN who delivered my baby girl. She has always been an amazing doctor who never treats you like another number. She will spend an hour with you at your appointment talking through things and getting to know you personally. But the night that she delivered my daughter, she stayed longer to check on how I was doing and shared a touching story of how her second child, who was also a girl, was stillborn when she was 31 weeks pregnant about 10 years ago. Dr. Gray sharing her story oddly made me feel comfortable and at peace. As this was my first pregnancy, and unfortunately this was the outcome, it made me feel less lonely. I wasn't the only one that's been through something similar. It made me feel supported when I felt everything was shattering around me. I would have never known that Dr. Gray had gone through this if she didn't share it, because she's so beautiful, accomplished, and brilliant. Though her sharing it gave me strength to know that you can come up on top after such a tragedy. I didn't even know what a stillborn was until it happened to me. Fast forward 9 months later, Dr. Gray went to the same hospital to deliver a baby and ran into Bethany and Allie. They both asked about me to see how I was doing. Dr. Gray shared the news that I am expecting my rainbow baby boy, Braxton Atlas Sophos. Both Bethany and Allie were over the moon with happiness and told Dr. Gray that they hope that they're working the day baby Braxton will be born. What I think is beautiful looking back on the experience is the amount of love, uplifting support, compassion, and care I received from the moment I arrived to the moment I left. Most doctors and nurses are trained a certain way, and so they come off cold, and maybe that's because they don't want to get close to the patient or get emotionally involved. But truly, I feel I was blessed to have the staff I had because I needed them to care, because in that point of my life, I didn't care anymore. My heart breaks for any female who has to give birth and have a terrible staff because everyone deserves a Bethany, Allie, Lindsay, and Dr. Gray. My name is Haley McKinder, and I'm from Wakatane, New Zealand. My son Archer was born at 32 weeks and passed away when he was 3 days old. We both were treated amazing, and I honestly only have good things to say. The whole time when the medical team were working on Archer, they always would check in on me and made sure all my needs were met and told me every single thing they were doing to him. When I was told he wasn't going to make it, we were moved into a private room as we were around other sick babies so we could have our space. On day 2, the nurse that was assigned to him that day was incredible. She even cried and sang songs with us to him. I will never forget her and her kindness. Archer had a lot of doctors working on him. I don't really recall any of the other doctors' names, apart from one who really stood out to me, was his main doctor, and she was outstanding. She went above and beyond for us, and even after Archer passed, she sat with me for ages, even past her work hours, as she wanted to make sure I was taken care of. Months later, I also had a Zoom meeting with her to discuss everything and to check in on how I'm coping. Another lady that stood out to me was the nurse who looked after me when he had passed. She reached out to me also a couple of months later to check in on how I was doing, and I wasn't doing well, and I told her I felt like I needed more support as I was worried for myself. She set up a Zoom meeting for me with her just to talk about everything and have another person to talk to about Archer. My last story is at 20 weeks. I found out there was something wrong with him, and I had to fly to another city to get special scans, and my flights and transfers to and from the hospital were all paid for. I went every 4 weeks, and there was no charge all the times I went. I don't know what I would have done if I had to pay, as I was going to be a single mom. The team who I saw were outstanding as well. The midwife who works in that clinic called me throughout the weeks to make sure I was doing okay, and the doctor who told me the news was amazing. I know I wouldn't be able to tell someone that your baby might not make it, and she was so understanding and so kind. I'm so thankful for how I was treated because it was the worst time of my life losing Archer. I don't know what we would have done if I didn't have the kind people around us, and it breaks my heart that not all of us get treated the same way. Thank you for listening to our story. This next one is a voice recording sent in by Stephanie.
My name is Stephanie Rose, and I had a terrible experience with EVMS, maternal fetal medicine, in Virginia Beach. After my daughter Maylene was stillborn in May of 2023, I started doing a lot of research on stillbirths. I found Measure the Placenta and really dove into all the work they are doing to improve care. I found that MFM will include measuring the placenta in their anatomy scan at 20 weeks. So when I was pregnant with my rainbow baby, I asked my midwife to refer me to MFM for that scan. I love my midwife, and she was so great with me during my pregnancies. She's actually the one I spoke about when I described a good experience that I had during my stillbirth. She referred me to EVMS, which is the hospital they work with, and I scheduled an appointment. Now, this practice is about 3 hours away, so when I made the appointment, I asked if they would be measuring my placenta. The receptionist said yes. When they confirmed my appointment weeks later, I asked again and got the same answer from that receptionist. So I drove the 3 hours to meet with MFM in Virginia Beach. I went back with the tech, and before they started anything, I told her that my last pregnancy was a 40-week, one-day stillbirth, and I'm very nervous, and I really want to make sure my placenta is measured. She looked shocked and said, "I'm so sorry," and reassured me that they do everything in this scan to make sure that I have a healthy baby. The doctor came in and introduced himself and explained how the process would work, and I asked him if my placenta would be measured. Yes, we do all that here," is what he said. "I'll be back at the end to discuss what we find." The tech does the scan. She's pretty quick. She finishes in about 30 minutes, and that includes teaching another tech how to do the scans. The doctor comes in after and explains how everything looks great and normal, and he asks me if I have any questions, and I said yes. What are the measurements of my placenta? He looks at me, and then he looks at his tech, and he says, "I don't have that information. We don't measure the placenta." I was so angry. Everyone had lied. I literally looked at them and I said, "So you guys just lied to me?" And he responds, "It isn't standard care." And I said, "So you told me you were going to measure my placenta. My daughter was stillborn at 40 weeks due to a placental issue, and I want to make sure this baby's placenta is growing as it should." He looks confused. And then he opens up my folder to check the records. Oh my gosh, it made me so mad. The doctor at maternal fetal medicine had not even read my chart. He had assumed I was referred here because I would be 35 at the time of delivery. He didn't even take a moment to read the chart before meeting me or even when reviewing my scans. And now, mind you, my stillbirth was right before this pregnancy. So he didn't have to dig in my information to find that. After looking over the file, he proceeds to explain that he cannot tell me why I had a stillbirth. And I responded quickly that that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking that my placenta be measured. He says, well, that he can arrange for me to speak to the geneticist real quick. And of course, I don't mind talking to doctors about my pregnancy. So I said, sure, I'll talk to the geneticist. But I came here for my placenta to be measured, and that's what I want done. After speaking with the geneticist for a bit, he comes back and he asks if that satisfied my concerns. And I said, literally, I said, the geneticist and I both agree there are no genetic issues that caused my stillbirth. So are you going to measure my placenta now? And he begins to argue with me, and I put my hand up in the middle of him talking and I say, can my baby live without a placenta? And it's quiet. The technician, both of him get really quiet. And I know, I can see it in his face. He knows I'm not giving up. He knows that my baby can't live without a placenta. So he looks at the tech and asks her, can you measure the placenta? And she says, yes, I know how to do this. He says, okay, measure it. I then tell her, please also include looking at the cord insertion and the blood flow. She does this in 8 minutes. That's all it takes. I timed it, 8 minutes. And he gives me the measurements. Now, personally, I don't know what any of the measurements mean, but I knew before I walked in those doors, I was getting those numbers to ensure that they did what I wanted. I was not driving 3 hours back home, waiting another 2 weeks to meet with my midwife to find out they didn't do it. I wasn't leaving without that information. So I wait for the files even to be added to the app so I could read it. Then the doctor asks me if I would like to transfer care to his practice. And I looked at him and I said, why? You aren't offering me any better care than my doctor, and at least she doesn't lie to me. He says she's a midwife, not a doctor. Oof, I was mad. And I said, she's still better than here. And I said I would not be back. I could not believe that it was a simple, quick scan and they lied the whole time about doing it when they had no intention of performing that measurement. They didn't even think I would follow up and make sure that they took the scan. I don't understand why they made me argue and fight for something that should have just been included in my anatomy scan because I had a stillbirth previously due to a placenta issue. I promise I will never go back to that hospital or use that practice. And that included making the decision to have a C-section instead of a VBAC so that I could avoid going to that hospital and being with those doctors. I warn everyone that if they need to go to MFM, not to use EVMS or go to Virginia Beach.
Thank you so much to everyone who submitted your experiences over the last 2 episodes. Like I mentioned in the last episode, the point of hearing about both the good and the bad is to show that there really is no standard of care. The medical staff at many places are simply not trained on how to be compassionate after pregnancy loss. They don't all think to get the keepsakes like the handprints and the footprints. They don't always take photographs. They don't always take videos. If there really was a true standard, every family that went through a loss or infertility would get the compassion and kindness that we need. We would all get those photos and the keepsakes. We would all be treated humanely. Our baby would be treated as a person too. The more we educate others on the experiences we go through, the more we can push for these changes. Don't be afraid to share your story. Don't be afraid to push back and demand better care. How do you feel about this? Do you think that there should be some kind of standard used at all hospitals and medical centers? Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.